Hey everyone, welcome to Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard, an audio podcast. Got a really great guest on today. He's a product design leader with a background in agency design, video games, enterprise applications, and global consumer sites. He loves to help simplify the complex, work on big problems, and build collaborative, engaged thought leadership teams. He gravitates towards products that solve important problems, and as a design leader, he believes in empowerment, transparency, and iterative learning. Please join me in welcoming Jordan Girman. Welcome, Jordan.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Ready for 20 questions?
Go for it.
Okay, here we go. Number one, tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
Yeah, I am VP of design for LastPass. Mainly what I do is lead our design team in kind of three areas. One is people, develop really strong and hire really strong designers, create environments for them to succeed in where they have proper structure, mentor scenarios, ability to further their careers. And then also supplementary design type in careers such as design operations, research, all those pieces that make design environment really solid. The second thing I do is develop product, create strategies and frameworks to allow product to be successful based off of user needs, goals, and motivations, and develop really keen strategies that are both a pragmatic balance between the user and the business needs to make products successful across the board. And then develop really strong process environments that work with a triad of project managers, designers, and PM or engineers. And in those types of process environments, I'm usually looking at systems thinking to kind of further things along in terms of design systems and organizational structures. Yeah, so basically, to sum it all up, I lead large scale design teams.
Nice. Just a note for our audience. Jordan and I don't know each other, so new discovery here. But I think Jordan came through my LinkedIn with the celebration of his new job. So super excited to hear more of that. Number two, what's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
Yeah, I think I come at design from a little bit of a different background. I have a sociology degree. I've been doing this for a long time, even before it was user experience. It was information architecture. I think the key piece of knowledge that makes me different is I know there's not one way to do something. So most of my career has been, somebody saying, "Hey, we need to do this," and I'm just like, "Well, I can do that." And those little words of "I can do that" allow me to just jump in, learn as we go, and understand that there's multiple ways to approach a problem and to create a solution. It allows me to be flexible. It allows me to create a balance between making money for the business, but at the same time accomplishing a goal and motivation for the user. I think that's one of the big differences between me and a lot of other design leaders out there.
Great. Number three, why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
I like solving really large, complex problems. I like taking things that are really complicated and making them simple. And I really enjoy the challenge of not just creating really elegant design solutions, but also overall product experiences that are delightful for their users. I think as my career has transitioned into more leadership scenarios, I've really changed into building teams as well as building product, and I think that's always a new challenge. I love seeing people succeed in their careers. I love seeing people do really well and be challenged and create great product. So I think there's just so many dynamics to technology and the people who are building technology that it really interests me in terms of my job and my career.
Nice. I'm super excited to hear you bring up PM, product management, project management. We recently had John Maeda on the show, who has a blog called maeda.pm. which is just showcasing his love for that topic. Definitely check that out if you're interested in that area. Number 4, what does your future look like?
Yeah, well, I'm basically 3 weeks into LastPass, so there's a lot of work to do on that product, and that's really my focus for the next little while. Building that product out, there's a lot of new challenges coming into the password world, like password lists, zero trust networks. So there's a lot to like learn and expand and build with my current product. I plan to stay with this company for a long time and really build something that's really complete and industry leading. So right now, I think the future just looks at me staying in this position, growing my team, developing really strong product strategies, more partnership with our marketing partners and our brand definition, and really revamping the brand as well. But for the most part, I think, well, basically want to pay off my mortgage, I guess is the way to describe that in some form. So I'll be staying at the company that I'm currently at.
Nice. Number 5, I say, is unique to this podcast. The question is, let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
Yeah, well, that's a really an interesting question. We're talking about that a lot right now. So LastPass is a completely remote company, but majority of my designers are actually in Hungary. I had a really interesting conversation with one of our content designers talking about the differences in culture and how that plays into a website. And I've always noticed that in Canada, building websites for Americans, there's a big difference between the two in terms of expectations, especially in things like advertising, language, and tone as we're building out different ontologies. So I really think location plays a big part in terms of your perception of what things should be. And you have to really take context and place into your culture dynamic and understand how it differs from different areas. So leading a team of designers in Hungary right now in Budapest means that we have to look at their cultural differences, how they approach design and solving problems, and see how that plays in the marketplaces where we're the strongest, and make sure that there's some congruence between those types of scenarios.
Nice. Not to harp on the Maeda episode, but when he was working for Automatic, they were one of the first companies to be fully remote. So he was doing it before, I think, before pandemic hit. And yeah, definitely, if you're interested in the remote work topic, check that episode out. Number 6, if you had to start from the beginning, what advice would you give your former younger self?
Oh yeah, I when I read this question, I thought this was a difficult question in some ways. I think I'm very lucky in my career, and I wouldn't change anything. I've learned tons of different things. I think early in my career, I would have paid attention to mobile a lot more. I started before iPhones and before mobile internet was really a thing. And as we transitioned into the iPhone era and mobile browsing became a viable scenario, I don't think it was top of my mind as it should have been, and I could have driven that world a little bit more. So definitely paying attention to mobile. And I think in that mobile scenario, some of the designs I made early in my career while I was doing new mobile designs, I wasn't thinking about context as much. And context is really key when you're designing something mobile. Like, are you sitting in bed in your at home in your bed, or are you sitting on a train with tons of people you don't know around you? Determines, what you're going to do and how you're going to behave while using that particular device. So those types of things are just more knowledge over time, I think is the way to describe it.
Great. What's your day in the life like?
Right now it's early because most of my team is in Europe. So I get up at 5. I have meetings pretty much from 5 until about noon. We have leaders in Boston, Austin, San Francisco. So it's a varied time scale that I look at. Right now, because I'm new, I'm really building out my 30, 60, 90-day plan. I'm interviewing and having conversations with all of our designers and design operations team, as well as all of our researchers. Really get to know everybody, understand how they got into the career that they're in and where they want to go with their career. So I have a good understanding of the team as a whole. And then we're getting into product walkthroughs and kind of just more me learning the product as I understand some of the context and history behind some of the pieces that we're currently building.
Great. And number 8, lifelong learning is a popular topic these days. How do you stay up to date?
Yeah, you know what? There's constant reading. Always looking for a new design book. I'm always looking at things that are coming out in terms of the industry, smashing mag, those types of scenarios. So there's constant like online reading. I think my biggest knowledge base though comes from those, junior and mid-level designers that we're hiring that are like 20 years younger than me and have a completely different vantage point of technology than I do. Like you have to understand, I grew up in a small town in Manitoba. We had a party line where I had 5 different families on one phone line. So, a digital native, a 24-year-old that we hire to be a designer right out of school is going to have a completely different perspective in terms of what technology is and what it does for them versus mine. So just learning from their experience and how they tackle things, learning from what they like as their aesthetic, really keeps me fresh and up to date on what's going on and what the industry is doing.
Yeah, we often talk about on this podcast the nature of design today being this kind of collaborative, kind of slowly improving kind of process versus the ivory tower know-it-all designer that once was asked to solve everything. Things have really shifted, haven't they?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I think we talked about it earlier, how about there's more than one ways to design something, right? And you can be successful with many different designs and approaches. So really absorbing different vantage points and viewpoints is really important.
Great. Number 9, what tools do you use? Are you a digital nomad or are you analog as well?
I always have a Sketchpad. I really like the Rhoda dot pads. That's really good graph paper that I can draw little diagrams and stuff to that effect. For the most part, it's Figma and Miro are the 2 primary ones that we're using.
Right.
I've used everything though, from OmniGraffle to Photoshop to InDesign to Sketch to Figma. I've used pretty much the gambit of those types of things. iRise, like there's just a billion of them out there. And right now the predominant ones are Figma and Miro though.
Nice. Halfway. Number 10, how do you deal with work-life balance?
Well, the remote working really helps with that. I love the fact that I don't have to commute. I love that at lunch I can go hang out with my daughter who's hanging out in the house. She's 2, so it's awesome to be around and see her grow up. I think there are times when you have to be busy and there are times when you can control your schedule. I definitely make sure to make time for working out, and understanding my role isn't so much the sitting in front of a computer and designing things anymore. My role is thinking about where we're going and what we're doing. So whether that's a walk with the dog or whether that's an evening where I'm out, at the gym thinking about the next thing that we have to build, it kind of portrays that I'm at work or thinking about work in some form. So just bearing that in mind, being flexible with my schedule, but at the same time allowing myself to have my personal time is very important. So it's about being cognizant of balance and paying attention to that.
Great. Number 11, if you weren't doing what you do now, what would you be doing?
Yeah, that's a really crazy question because we have to understand too is when I was in university, this job didn't exist. Like it just wasn't a thing. So it's hard to say. I started my life wanting to be a professional cyclist. I ended up in bike stores. It could be a bunch of different things. I think I would have ended up in technology in some form, but it probably might have been more on the engineering side than anything else. But I really love what I do, so it's hard to imagine doing something else.
Great. Just another note: if you like the trajectory that Jordan's on, check out the C-suite designer episodes with Eric Quint and Rajay Vanderheed. They're kind of further along, I guess, but probably in a similar trajectory to you. Number 12, what would you not like to do in terms of career?
What would I not like to be doing? Yeah, I think anything that doesn't really like there's like when you think about things that don't really contribute to society that much. And beginning of my career, I was making a lot of noise, like marketing sites for Mercedes Benz, Facebook ads for Dunkin' Donuts, those types of things. And now in my career, I like to work on products that I feel like give back. If you look at my CV in the last little while, it's things like Glassdoor, which is an amazing product where in a world where we're ununionized, you're able to give power back to people and give them information so that they know what they're walking into and have an understanding of their value in the marketplace. Um, Last couple of gigs with Cisco and this current job is about security, about keeping you safe, and about your digital experience and how to make sure that you're protected. I love those kind of products that give back and actually contribute something in some form. So I would really hate to be working on something like, a website that does patent trolling or something like that, like just that doesn't really provide any value to society or humanity.
Nice. 13, what's your favorite word, quote, or sentence?
Yeah, so there's, what I really like Paul Rand's. There's a line that's design can be art, design can be aesthetics, design can be simple. That's why it's so complicated. I really like the concept that there's a lot of people that think in if you're doing your job well in user experience, nobody should notice because, oh, that's just the way it should be, and you just do the thing that you meant to do. And I really like that quote because it showcases that there's complexity behind making something simple. And yeah, so.
Nice. And how about a least favorite word, quote, or sentence?
I, you know what? I always hate the word synergy. There's a lot of probably weird quotes like in business speak that happen quite often. But when somebody says that they need to find some more synergy between our teams or something to that effect, I'm always like, dude, you just, yeah, it's not the best word in the world.
Great. If you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what would you choose?
Um, I would say learning, maybe always learning, I guess is the way to describe that in some ways. I definitely suffer from a little bit of imposter syndrome where I always feel like when I walk into a meeting, somebody's going to point at me and be like, hey, you don't know what you're doing. And then I have to be like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. The reality of it is, I do have a wealth of knowledge, but in order to placate that imposter syndrome, I always feel like I need to be learning something.
16, what keeps you up at night?
Um, there's a bunch of different things in terms of that. I think economically, politically, there's always these big factors across the ecosystem and the macro environment that we live in. Having a daughter has put a lot of things in perspective. I think environment is probably the scariest thing. Regardless of whether or not she has a career, whether or not she's successful in terms of school and education, it's like the world that she lives in is viable for her to live in. That's really what I want to make sure and maintain in some ways. So a lot more environmental focus has been forefront for me in the last little while, which is kind of outside of work, but it's just the reality that we live in.
Great. And 17, what's a dream you're chasing?
Um, right now, I think a dream I'm chasing is paying off my mortgage, just because of interest rates and stuff like that. That's kind of top of mind in some ways. But in terms of work and experience, I think there's always an ideal of the proper process, whether it's double diamond, whether it's kind of like an agile environment or what have you. I think we're always chasing that workspace, and there's always things and friction and things that you're driving for. So really a dream that I'm chasing is developing a product environment that everybody's happy with and it feels like is really moving at a pace that's driving an industry in some form. So really nailing down that proper process is something I'm chasing right now.
I don't often talk about this episode with Laszlo Lazar, who's an engineer, and kind of grew up always being in the gifted student programs, and then after finishing college, really kind of says he was very concerned with paying off student loans, and that ended up being top of mind for him for a majority of his career. So it's really interesting to hear you talk about that economic side in this context, I think. But final stretch here, number 18, what inspires you?
I love a lot of things that the internet can do. Like there's powerful environments in crowdsourcing. So for example, the Kepler project, where you have scientists all over the world analyzing data and finding things that we would never have found if it wasn't for that crowdsourced kind of information and people building off each other. Recaptcha is another one, Wikipedia, those types of things. So I love the masses of humanity doing, mundane tasks, but actually really contributing back to our overall experience and the ability to learn. Really cool stuff to see, and I'd like to see more of that.
Any advice you'd like to share?
Yeah, for designers, I think the big thing for me is intention. So when you're designing something, you really have to understand the reasoning behind what you're designing. And I gravitate towards designers that are not just talking about what they did, but really why they did it. So a lot of times I like to see people focusing on the why. That's really what separates a good designer from a bad designer. If I ask you why you put that button there and you're just like, oh, I just felt better there, that's not going to fly. I need the reasoning and the intention. And then the second thing I'm always looking for in designers is initiative. So a lot of designers are waiting to be told what to do and what to design. And I really like to see designers on my team that are driving towards something. They see a problem, they want to tackle it, and they figure out how to do it. So those two factors are really what I see successful designers in the organizations now, and something to focus on as you're starting off your career.
Great. And the one we all love, number 20, how can our listeners keep tabs on you? How do we follow you? How do we stay up to date with your career progression here?
Yeah. So LinkedIn is always good. I'm posting articles. Medium is solid as well. I haven't written in the last little while just because of timescales, but there are a lot of articles on Medium that you can find me on. I deleted my Twitter recently just because of my dislike of Elon Musk. But you can also reach out to me probably on Instagram at moonwaffle.com or at moonwaffle, I think it is. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Jordan. It's super exciting to see you kind of come out with this career move and be really bold and loud about it. I think you're catching a lot of people's attention, and especially now with what's happening in the job scene, it's really inspiring to see people make it right now. So I think it's really great in that respect. Thank you so much for joining today. Great talking.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thanks, man.